Tonight, fraud, ripping off the elderly.
He would do a shop for her, he would help with the carers, so she became quite reliant on him.
The growing number of victims.
How can I help you today?
Since 2018, we've seen our own call numbers go from 4,000 calls to now dealing with probably 50,000 people.
And how can we stop it?
I feel that banks need to be much more proactive in looking after their older customers. They owe them a duty of care.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. More than £500 million was stolen from people aged 65 and over in England and Wales last year. But many victims fear coming forward, as those stealing from them are family members, close friends, or those in positions of trust. As the government prepares to modernise power of attorney procedures, Tonight asks, is enough being done to protect older people from financial abuse? As we get older, most of us will want to make sure our finances are in order for our peace of mind, something that will generally involve us relying on others for help and support. But unfortunately, this can leave us as targets. One of the ways it's advised we try to protect ourselves is by giving someone we know and trust the power to act as our attorney. Brought into law in 2007, lasting power of attorney is a legally binding agreement that allows someone else to manage our affairs. But how much do we know about it?
Is it when you die and, like, your daughter looks after your affairs or etc.?
I just know that it exists. I've never had anything to do with anything like that, but I just know it exists.
I'm 101. I'm on the way to being 102 in April. I prefer to manage my own money for as long as I possibly can.
But it's not just trusted friends and loved ones who can manipulate the elderly for financial gain. In 2017, a care home manager called David Barton was taken to court for defrauding 5 of the residents at Barton Park in Southport.
He conned around £11 million out of wealthy elderly residents with what the prosecution called snake-like grooming.
Solicitor Amanda Noyce worked on behalf of the family of 2 of his victims, Katie and Gordon Willey, who'd spent some of their final years being looked after by David Barton and his staff.
He set up this rather peculiar care home, which was only inhabited by wealthy individuals.
David Barton tried to manipulate these wealthy residents to get his hands on their fortunes by encouraging them to change their wills to benefit him, asking them to hand over valuables and classic cars, and by overcharging them for care.
Part of what Mr. Barton tried to do was to isolate the residents from their families. So in the case of Mr. and Mrs. Willey, he even produced a list of banned people, which included virtually all their family and friends.
When Mrs. Willey passed away in 2013, David Barton tried to enforce an oral agreement he claimed he'd made for the couple to live at Barton Park for the rest of their lives, in return for their entire estate. He also issued inflated invoices for the care he said he'd already provided, including charging tens of thousands of pounds for rides in one of his fleet of luxury cars. In total, he tried to claim the Willey family owed him £10 million.
It became very clear that David Barton had used intimidatory tactics. So, for example, in the case of Mrs. Willey, she had been struggling with looking after Gordon because he was quite severely suffering from senile dementia. So he would threaten her that she would be sent back to live in her home with Gordon unless she basically did what he told her to do.
After one of the longest criminal cases Liverpool Crown Court has ever seen, in May 2018, David Barton was found guilty on 10 counts of fraud, theft and related offences, and sentenced to 21 years in prison.
He is a greedy man that has exploited vulnerable members of our society where they were expecting trust and care and compassion.
There was a common thread that all these victims were without children. and they were all isolated from whatever family they had. And they were all led to believe that Mr. Barton was their saviour and was the son that they never had.
I'm just always around you.
With an ageing population and 1 in 2 of us at risk of being directly impacted by dementia as we get older, the government's encouraging us to set up lasting power of attorney.
I thought it'd be a good idea to do lasting power of attorney while I'm still capable.
So that if you do lose capacity, someone you trust is able to act on your behalf to manage your finances and care.
I can't think of people I trust more with my life than my boys.
There are 2 kinds, one which covers finance and property, and one for health and welfare matters.
Have any of you heard of lasting power of attorney?
I've heard of power of attorney. I'm not quite sure what the word lasting relates to it.
Okay, so power of attorney is a generic terminology for giving power to an attorney to act for you in respect of decisions and managing your affairs. The lasting power of attorney is the name for the document which gives that power.
Emma, Jackie and Kay from Manchester want to know more about what a power of attorney is. So professional will writer Fiona Daly is going to try to give them some answers.
How do you make a power of attorney?
There's no requirement to get legal advice. However, I would strongly recommend that you do. So you can make a lasting power of attorney. The document looks like a form. However, it's actually a legal deed. The signatures of the donor, the person making the document, and the attorneys, all those signatures have to be witnessed.
Costs for power of attorney can vary. A DIY version costs up to £82 to register, but fees can go up as high as a few £1,000s for legal guidance. Fiona says that many people think your spouse or a close family member could make decisions on your behalf if they needed to, but that isn't the case.
There's lots of misconceptions about lasting powers of attorney. The main one is I'm next of kin, I'm husband or wife to the person who's lost mental capacity. So of course I can make decisions for them about the bank accounts. Of course I can manage their utility bills. Unfortunately, that's totally untrue. The only way that they can manage the affairs of the spouse or the next of kin is by having in place a legal document called the lasting power of attorney. It's really, really important.
Now I realise that it's a large document, legally binding, I would definitely get legal advice to actually put that in place and make sure it was filled out correctly.
Having seen the power of attorney paperwork now, I do feel like it's not as scary as I thought it was, and I would definitely recommend it. I'm going to look at it more.
The Office of the Public Guardian registered over 1 million lasting powers of attorney in the year 2022 to 2023, up 9% on the previous year. The government will be updating the application process for power of attorney using a new Act of Parliament, including bringing in an online-only version of lasting power of attorney.
The benefits of the new Act, we would hope, are going to speed up the process. So at the moment it's 20 weeks for this paper application. We would hope that a digital process would significantly reduce that time.
A lot remains to be seen. We haven't got the full picture yet. What we're always working with the government to raise is to ensure that adequate safeguards are part of that system and that the voices of older people are heard in the process of devising that policy.
The biggest criticism of the new online-only process is that it might cause difficulties for some older users.
It assumes that everybody can cope with the digital process. When we bear in mind that the vast majority of those donors who sign LPAs are over 75, we have to expect that a fair proportion of those will not be able to make this application without assistance.
If I was doing an online power of attorney, I'd probably have to get a family member, one of the younger family members, to help me with it, because technology is not really that great for me.
When it comes to stuff online, I don't sort of trust a lot of things online anyway. That's personally, so it'd have to be via paperwork.
The government body in charge of the power of attorney is the Office of the Public Guardian. They told Tonight there are now more than 6.8 million enduring and lasting powers of attorney, with breaches of trust being extremely rare, but we investigate any concerns thoroughly and take robust action if needed. The Powers of Attorney Act will strengthen safeguards with additional identity checks, while the new online system will streamline the application process. We're also working on an improved paper process for those who prefer not to use the internet. Whether applying online yourself or seeking professional assistance, the key thing is to use power of attorney to ensure that your decisions are carried out for you by those you trust.
The one piece of advice I would give everyone is to plan ahead, have those difficult conversations now so that you are able to express your wishes and feelings, and that your family members know what those are and that they can ask you questions about it.
Financial abuse can be difficult to spot, but if you have concerns, you can make a report to your local authority's safeguarding team, the police, or the Office of the Public Guardian.